LegalizeFreedom.com. Why are we here? Where do we come from? Where are we going? From the nature of reality to the future of humanity. Beyond politics, poverty and war. LegalizeFreedom.com.
Greetings and welcome once again to LegalizeFreedom.com. I'm your host Greg Moffat, and today we present the fifth and final instalment with Tom Campbell discussing his book My Big Toe. As well as continuing the themes from the first four, in this episode we consider human nature, our collective culture, and what lies ahead of us in the future. While it appears that human consciousness has an inbuilt capacity for fear, its origins in the fight or flight mechanism have for millennia been supplanted by an irrational tendency towards a reflexive terror of the unknown, fear by default. Such fear is simply debilitating and has been further mutated over time into fear of each other and even ourselves. As we race headlong into a still new millennium, brimming with uncertainty, instability, and converging crises, our challenge is to transcend our outdated paradigms and change our systems as we change ourselves. Even as the realms of energy, economy, and environment erupt and explode, we can recognize that cosmically we are but children and that we have the capacity to mature and make better decisions. Existential questions remain. Are we alone? The most interesting item in the universe, the rest just lights in the sky. The answers to such questions become questions once more, and the answers return us to the riddles of the ages. In the end, however, there is a purpose to our existence: to learn, to evolve, to become more, to love, and to let go of fear. Hello and welcome, Tom, and thank you so much for joining us once again on LegalizeFreedom.com.
Oh, well, it's good to be here again, Greg. It's always fun to chat with you.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, today, Tom, we're going to be doing the latest and probably last in our series of talks. We've been discussing your trilogy called My Big Toe, which is, we break it down into awakening, discovery, and inner workings. And of course, we've been talking about things that have branched off from that, and all sorts of other related areas, which is, why we spent so much time speaking together. Now, as I've mentioned in the last couple of segments, if people want to know about your background and work in general, if they go back to the first couple of segments that we did together, that's all presented there. We decided, just in the interests of not, if repetition, or rather avoiding repetition, that we would skip that. So I suggest people go and do that. And also, all these interviews are linked together on the website. You can go from one to the other. Today, I want to think a little bit about, move away perhaps from some of the science and the conceptual stuff to think about culture, human culture, our minds, and how they operate in terms of perceiving the world, particularly in the context of perceiving some of the ideas presented in your work, and also where we find ourselves collectively in this grand experiment. And it seems that there's a sort of collective cultural insanity that clouds our view of who and what we are, and also clouds the nature of reality such that as we perceive it. And extending on from that, it seems that there's a sort of a pathological or even psychopathic mindset that seems to be running amok in the world at present. It may even have been doing so for thousands of years. And if that psychopathic mindset is not a physical majority, it does seem at the moment to be dominant. And this then becomes normal in some way. Not that the rest of the population adopt it, but they kind of look on and go, oh well, it's just how things are. And I think I had Joseph Chilton Pearce on here once, and a memorable quote from him that I'm paraphrasing was that living within culture but not being of it is very difficult.
Okay, well, there's quite a few points there. I'll try to touch all of them. It is true that the culture we live in, what we see when we look at the news and see what's going on within our culture, and even for that matter around the world in most cultures, we see a lot of fear, we see a lot of ego, we see a lot of belief, we see a lot of dysfunction, a lot of aggressiveness, and these are the things like aggressiveness are part of this fear, ego, and belief. It all stems from the same thing, and actually the ego and belief stem from the fear. So it's really a fear-based culture that we live in. So it's not a very pretty sight. It looks like a pretty ugly place to live. But it is an accurate representation of the level of our collective consciousness. That's us. That's who we are. And it's that way because we are the way that we are. So the solution to this rough, greedy, aggressive, self-centered environment that we live in is for us to grow up, to grow out of that fear, to grow out of that, self-centeredness, to grow out of our beliefs and our ego. That is the only solution. There is really no other solution to that fundamental problem. Now we can address symptoms. We can look at certain institutions. We can look at government and say how that's not working very well. We can look at corporate, business world, and we can see, well, that's not working very well. It seems to be driven by greed, and the government's driven by control, and both are driven by ideology. And we look at that and say, well, if we could just replace those things, if we could change the monetary system, then everything would be better. That is addressing symptoms. The things we find wrong in politics, in the economic system, with corporations, it all stems from the same things. It's all fear-based. It's control-based. Control, of course, is there because of fear. And it represents we the people, our collective level of consciousness quality. So we could change any one of those symptoms, and within, a few years, if not at least a generation or two, they would be right back to the way they were. Different form, no doubt, but the same problem would be showing in the same or in different ways. So that's just temporary symptom relief to modify those kinds of things. Change the government, change the economic system, change the way corporations see the world. Those are only symptoms of a larger problem of low consciousness quality. So the only solution is to grow up. So that kind of deals with how we are, this culture that we have, and how did it get to be that way? Well, it's not necessarily as bad as it looks. We look back and we tend to think with idyllic vision of the past, and the past was actually rougher, meaner, and less civilized than what we're living in now. Most of the past. Surely you can find exceptions, but for the most part, in the last 200-300 years, our culture and the world in general has become a kinder, gentler, less fearful place. But there's still plenty of fear to make it a very, I don't know what we say, a kind of a nasty place to live. It's still a rough place, but it has been worse. So we are evolving toward a higher quality of consciousness. It's just a very slow evolution, and most evolution tends to be slow. It's baby steps. One little baby step at a time do we tend to grow up and see bigger pictures. So we are just, who we are, and we can lament how, greedy, how self-centered, how power hungry, how control hungry we are. But that's just us, and that won't change until we get rid of the fear that drives us. That fear creates the ego, which creates the self-centeredness, creates the belief, which sets the constraints on what we can understand, on the size of the picture we can see. And until we deal with that, then nothing really is going to change in that level. So evolution is slow. We're making progress, but that's little comfort for people who are caught in the kind of the meanness and the uncaringness of our culture the way it is today.
Of course, as you say, this is something that's not a short-term process. And yet at the minute, we saw this with the whole 2012 thing, there does seem to be a tremendous yearning and desire for things to change right now. And I don't know how much that goes back into history, whether there was 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, earlier than that, there was generations who just thought things have to change now. They're at breaking point. But certainly I speak with a lot of people who firmly believe, 2012 being in the past, that we are on the cusp of something. I did an interview recently where the guy was saying that he thinks the internet is the deal breaker. And I don't know what your feeling about that is. Obviously you've said you feel this is a long-term process, but do you think that this yearning for change right now, and the change that we do see, in your opinion, and is that not really anything special? Is that just another little baby step?
No, I think we have done. We're in a different position now than we have ever been in the whole history of the human race, and I would agree that the reason, or one of the manifestations of this difference, is the internet. The internet makes a lot of difference, and the big difference is that we are all netted now. We're all part of this of the same conversation, whereas that was impossible before. We've always had little bubbles of enlightenment here and there that had big pictures and saw the nature of reality and realized that love is the answer and that sort of thing. But they've never been able to kind of coalesce or join together. They've always ended up being just isolated physically, culturally, and that changes now with the internet. Besides that, new ideas, new perspectives on things can move through not only our local areas and our local cultures, but worldwide in a matter of days. So it's a whole new ball game. But I think the other aspect of the internet is that because it has made communications between people so much easier and so more widely spread, that it's had a tendency to polarize. Because we've had this ability to communicate, this ability to spread out, the world is shrinking. That means that some people have been able to use that to exert more control, to exert more, what shall I say, to further their greed, their fear, whatever. They have built on that new communication. So we have, we have the, in the smaller world, we have the global economy, and we have the global corporations, and kind of a global struggle for power and control and influence and wealth and all that sort of thing, which was pretty much relegated to local, even smaller than national levels before. So we have this polarization that we've not seen before, where the greed and the control, the fear end, has been given a boost in its ability to organize and create more wealth for itself or more power for itself. On the other hand, the people who understand that love is the answer have also been able to spread their ideas and connect in ways that they never have before. So as we look at it, I think from our perspective, we see this something's got to change. Something is about to pop. The bubble's about to break, and that's because we've seen it kind of puff up or grow at both extremes, at both ends of the spectrum, and that just makes it so much more visible to us, so much more obvious because of this bifurcation, if you will, at the us across maybe moral and ethical lines and across fear versus love lines. So I think that's what we're seeing, but I think that the reason that's happening, I say because the internet allowed it, but the internet has also allowed us for the first time to come together as a race, for the humans to actually become one world family, to be cooperative with each other. That was hard to do when we didn't even know who each other were in a world that was much larger. Now that it's shrinking, we understand each other better. We can see each other, on videos. We're more aware of a bigger picture that way. So I think we have the first opportunity ever to become one world family. The infrastructure to support that has just come into place in the last, 20, 30 years. So that's a good sign. But it also, like I say, has created this bifurcation of the fear to one side and the love moving to the opposite side. And it does give the impression of something's about to pop. And I think that's probably the case. I think in the next, who knows how long, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, we're going to see some major changes in the rate of our evolution. I think we're going to grow a lot, or we could possibly, de-evolve some. But I think it will be more dramatic because now we're connected. We talk about internet time. Everything moves faster on internet time. Well, I think that's the truth. And it's also the truth about our evolution. It's going to move faster on internet time as well. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, that we have this sense that there is something bigger, something better, that this greed, fear, control is just wrong. It's not taking us anyplace useful. We've been doing that for the last, 5,000 years, and it just doesn't seem to go anywhere good. So we're looking now at the opposite end of that, to the love and the caring and the cooperation. And that seems to be a better thing, but we don't know how to incorporate it. We don't know how to apply it to our daily life. So that is going to just keep bubbling up as it is. And on the science end of it, we have now, in the last decade, scientific experiments have been showing or have been indicating or describing this reality as a virtual reality. So now there are hundreds, thousands of physicists, of scientists who have looked at this experimental data and said, it looks like this is a virtual reality, that our reality is information-based. And that is a great step forward because the scientists of our culture are the people who tell us what to believe, who tell everybody else what's right and what's wrong. What is it that we should, the ideas we should consider and the ideas we should throw away. And we listen to the scientists. We trust them that they're telling us the truth. So I call the scientists the new high priests of Western culture. But really they're the high priests of the world culture. So when the scientists get to the point where they indeed do say this is a virtual reality, that is going to start kind of a landslide, if you will. And they're getting to that point. Like I say, every university in the world, every physics department in the world has some physicists in it that think virtual reality is the right idea. It's probably not the majority yet, but it's certainly a strongly growing minority because that's where the experiments, are taking us. So once we get to that idea that this is a virtual reality, then the question comes up, who or where is the program? Where is this virtual reality being run? Who's the programmer for this virtual reality? You see, that starts to open up. We have then science, we have physics, opening up another dimension that is non-physical, because a simulation, a virtual reality cannot be created, in the same reality that's virtual. In other words, a simulation can't create itself. If you're in the Sims or the World of Warcraft, the server that's creating World of Warcraft can't be inside the World of Warcraft simulation. You see, it has to be outside. So claiming that this is a virtual reality is logically saying that the source is in some other reality frame, some non-physical frame to us, because what is physical is basically what you inside the virtual reality see as the virtual reality. Outside that virtual reality is non-physical. So when the scientists get to, produce logic leading us to a non-physical source, then it'll be a matter of, do we get into another religious food fight about, who's in charge? That's my God making this virtual reality. No, it's my God, this sort of thing. Do we have more religious wars, or do we realize that consciousness is the computer? And when we realize that consciousness is a computer, then the next step, that is just, again, deductive logic from that, is that love is the answer. That's the point. That's the purpose of our being here. That's the growing that we're supposed to be doing. So if that becomes also a position of the high priest's science, then we've just taken a giant step in this world where we're all connected, and this drama has been playing out maybe over a couple of decades. So I see that as a possibility. Now, we could digress into some kind of religious wars, or we could just ignore the whole thing and deny it for another 100 years, kind of like we have been doing since the double slit experiment and the birth of quantum mechanics. But I think not. I think this time, because of the internet, it's not easy to stuff information in a little corner and ignore it. It's a much harder thing to do these days. So yes, I do see that we are in a very auspicious time, the kind of the turning point where things begin to change. And I don't mean that they're going to change, in a few years. We're at a turning point. This turning point may last over several decades. It's hard to say how long this will take, but I see that with the advent of the internet and worldwide inexpensive communications, we have the first time to become one world family, and we are beginning to have the scientific and the ethical structure to build underneath of that to actually make it a real thing. And for that reason, a lot of people kind of sense this intuitively, even though they can't put logical structure to it like I've just done, but they intuitively sense that something is about to pop, something is happening here, and that's what they feel is this kind of quickening to see bigger pictures. Maybe you might say toward spiritual values, toward love and cooperation as opposed to fear and ego and belief.
Well, for more on the science of all this and the conceptual side, I'd refer listeners to the earlier segments in this series that we did. But all of this reminds me of a accelerating phenomenon that I've observed, and I'm sure other people have as well in recent times. And that's, I'm generalizing here just to make a point, but it's people going in two opposite directions. One group or, one type of person or whatever, however you want to put it, embracing what you describe and sort of feeling at some level, whether it's very distant, but it's there in the remotest part of their perception that something's changing or they need to change or that something is happening, right through to people that feel it very strongly and make major life changes very consciously as a result, embracing it. And on the other side, people probably, again, being affected by this culture of fear, being driven more into unconsciousness and actually sinking into the miasma of consumerism and mass media and propaganda and all the rest of it. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that could overall be seen as a good phenomenon, because sometimes it's darkest before dawn and, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can actually start to move in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, this polarization, this bifurcation I'm talking about, serves to make choices a lot clearer. It's more obvious what isn't working. It's more obvious what the problem is when the problem has kind of grown up right in your face, and it affects you every day, and it's easier to see what the solution is as well. So that's what this bifurcation does. It makes it clearer as which is which way leads to what.
Thinking culturally again, we've referred to a couple of times so far, the past of our species and a couple of times the quite distant past. We seem to have forgotten a great deal of what came before us in the history of our species, and we do have this tendency to dismiss our ancestors and forebears and believe, we're the peak of everything, even though that's being challenged on multiple fronts now, not least, environmental. Do you think that our ancestors were more aware of the big picture? And when I say big picture, I mean taking in some of your ideas, not necessarily as expressed by you, of course, but just those ideas that have always been? Or is the idea of a time frame of a few thousand years, is that just too narrow? Are we really very similar in many ways just to the Romans and the Egyptians and the Sumerians in our way of thinking?
Yes, I think we're very similar. Look at our evolution is over several millions of years, and 1,000 years or 2,000 years is just the last blink. That's the last 1/10 of 1%. Or 1/100th of 1% of that evolution. So yes, we're not that different than those that were, walking around on the earth, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. We are similar in many ways. Now, we've learned a lot since then, so intellectually we're a lot different, but our fundamental makeup isn't that much different. We're not that, smarter or dumber or that different in many fundamental ways from those people. But just look at, thinking about these ideas being around a long time. Buddhism, about 400 or 500 BC, and we have the Buddha saying that this physical reality is illusion. And now here in 2003, I published books talking about this reality is virtual. What's the difference? You see, we're saying the same thing. So people have, for thousands of years, been able to see bigger pictures because, just like today, their bodies are avatars. They are consciousness, and they had the ability, as we have today, to explore that consciousness and see this reality from outside of it, because we're consciousness. And when you do that, you can look back at it and say, oh, I see how that works. So people have understood how it worked for thousands, for 2,000 years, 2,500 years. But these are isolated. As I say, there's these little bubbles of enlightenment that have popped up all over the place. And you'll find that in all the major religions and philosophies. You'll see that there were people now and again who did see it. And the reason they saw it is because they were able to, experience it with their minds, with their consciousness. But they didn't have the concepts to explain it scientifically or logically. So what they came back with was poetry. It was ideas, it was concepts, it was description, but none of it seemed to really make logical sense. It was just description that made good intuitive sense, perhaps, but not something that anybody would call science. So it's been relegated to the margins.
Talking about the evolution of consciousness, I just want to think about the concepts of individual consciousness and collective consciousness. We hear about the wisdom of crowds, but we also hear about the madness of crowds. I'm thinking of violence at sporting events and Black Friday and, that sort of thing that seems to infect the collective mind and one feeds off the other. But then there's also the positive aspect of all that. Sure. And just get your thoughts on that, because also in your work, I seem to remember you speaking about the idea of evolving towards a more collective consciousness, but without becoming assimilated. It's not like the Borg. The individual is retained in some way.
Right, absolutely. Well, first, talk about collective consciousness. There is such a thing, and what it is that if you identify yourself with a group, then you become part of that group, and you share in that group's consciousness. And by I say share, you think of consciousness as a bunch of vectors, if you will, and you kind of get the vector sum of all of these consciousnesses, and that's your collective consciousness. It's the sum of all the individuals put together. Now, when we see that on the negative side, we call it mob psychology, where we have a group that's angry or upset about something, and that anger, that fear, then tends to drag everybody down, and the group will do things that are worse than any individual in the group. So the group does things that no individual in the group would have done by themselves, because they're all encouraging each other, pulling each other down with their negativity, with their fear. The same thing works on the positive end, as you said. If you are around people who have big pictures, who are cooperative, who are about love and caring and other and not about themselves, you feel good in that company. You feel uplifted, and that drags you up a little bit. So it works either way. It even works in something as banal as a corporation. If you work for IBM, then you become part of the IBM culture, and you tend to think and feel and act like the people do in IBM. If you're a member of, the UK, then eventually, as you identify as being a member of the United Kingdom, you begin to act and think and feel in ways that are associated with that mindset, that culture, of the UK. You just pick that up. Now, you can be in a culture, as you said, and still be without it. That's when you live in it, but you do not see yourself as a part of it. You do not see yourself as a member of that group. And if you don't see yourself as a member of the group, then you don't connect with all the other consciousness that are in the group. See, every consciousness is netted with every other consciousness. It's like a big World Wide Web. I call it the reality wide web. All consciousness are netted. And as you identify with certain groups of consciousness, you share some collective consciousness with them. Carl Jung called these archetypes. So he looked at different levels of organization and saw their collective consciousness. Like, at the species level, there's certain things that are just common to humans, certain attitudes and ideas that are common to being human. And there's certain attitudes and ideas that's, common to being, in the UK, or common to being German, or common to being, Indian, or Pakistani, or whatever else, Brazilian. All of these groups have culture, and this culture is something that people take on. And it's not because when you're 5 years old you go to culture classes and people tell you how to act and what to believe and what to think in this culture. You just get it by osmosis. You get it because you consider yourself a piece of the culture, and you just share in that that mental energy, if we want to put it that way. That would be a metaphor. You share in that archetype, in that collective consciousness of that group, and you just pick it up and begin to become a part of it. So that's kind of how that works. And if you find things about your nation, say, or your culture, or the thing that you live in, if you find things about that you really don't like, then you can overcome that groupthink and be different. You don't have to follow it. It's just there. People who live their lives kind of unconsciously, they live their lives like zombies who just do what they do without ever thinking about why or what they're doing. They tend to just grab hold of those, of these archetypes and just live them. If you're more conscious than that, then you can say, well, I like these parts, but these other parts I reject. I'm not just a mindless part of this culture. I'm an individual, and I choose to reject certain things and accept others. So that's, that comes with being a fully conscious individual, is that what you're doing and why you're doing it becomes a part of your conscious choice, as opposed to just a zombie like following the herd.
Well, we may not go to culture classes, as you say, but the drive towards acculturation is very strong. It's like crabs in a bucket, one's trying to get out and the other crabs will pull it back in. Because if too many people step out of the culture, then it's a bit like with too many people leaving a religion, then the numbers are required so that the people in the religion all think that they're right and sane and that this is the way. And if too many people go over to the other side, so to speak, or just walk out of hell, then the more people I guess that's how collapse happens, and the more people within that begin to question, say, well, hang on a minute, we were told that this was the only way, and now there's all these other people doing all this other stuff.
Right. We are herd animals. Now I say that, with quotes around it. We're herd animals. We are social animals. And as social animals, like, cows in a herd, we tend to have groupthink. We tend to have rules that everybody needs to conform. Everybody needs to look like everybody else. Everybody needs to think like everybody else. And if we see somebody who is a little different than us, it frightens us. We want to stay away from that person. We shun them. We only accept people who are like us. That's why we look at other cultures and they're not like us. Therefore, we think that we're better than they are and they're wrong and we're right. We look at people with other religious beliefs and they're wrong and we're right. It's this herd mentality, and that's just the nature of a social animal, to conform, to become part of the social structure. And then because we're fearful beings, we have so much fear, we are frightened by things that are out of the box, by things that are different and unique. Different ways of looking at problems frighten us. So we cling to the old ways of looking at things because that's comfortable. That feels good. Being one in the herd and a whole bunch of cows and they're all mooing together, it feels safe when you're in there mooing with the herd. But if you stray out, out on the edge, away from that herd, then that's dangerous. That's a problem. And if you happen to have, green hair instead of brown hair like the rest of the herd, then you are ostracized. You are made fun of. You are criticized, and you are thought of as being less, even though something that is as trivial as the color of your hair is all that's being considered here. But you're considered less because you're different. And different is frightening. So that's just us as social animals. We're herd animals, and we act, that part. That's part of our fear is being different. We're afraid of being too unique. We want to be the same. We want to be acceptable to the rest of the herd.
I'm always tickled when I read people saying, for example, that America doesn't have a culture. Which is just a crazy thing to say. I can understand why some people might write that or think that, but it's got every much a bit. I'm only singling America out because I'm talking to you, but every bit as much a culture as anywhere else in the world.
Yes, well, that could be said of America, because America is what we call the melting pot. We had so many people from so many other cultures that immigrated here in the 17 and 1900s, particularly I guess 17s and 1800s, that we didn't have that sameness. The herd suddenly had people with all kinds of hair, blue hair and green hair and black hair and white hair, and it became kind of normal to be different because we had so many people who were all different. And that's part of what makes America, what makes the United States unique in its culture, is that it doesn't go back for 5,000 years, and our language, or the American language as opposed to the British English, it's much more changeable. It new words come and go, and we don't mind. We borrowed a lot of words from the people who came here. And we borrowed a lot of ideas and concepts and fashion and everything else. So we're kind of I don't know, maybe you say we're not a thoroughbred country. We're a mutt, we've got the genetics and the cultures of 100 different places are common here. So that's just the way we are. And for that reason, we don't have that kind of depth of feeling about things being the way they were and the way they came from in our history. Like I noticed when I was in Britain and other parts of Europe as well, we noticed how everything looks so old because the Europeans treasure old stuff. You know, so if you build a new house there, you have to build it so it looks like it's 300 years old. So it fits in with all the rest of the historical things, you know, in that area. Well, in the United States, if something gets old, we tear it down and build something new. You know, we don't have this thing about, preserving the old stone structures or something. We tear them down and build something that is more modern or more efficient or, has other features. But I'm sure we lose some things that way too. But we don't have that same sense of history that Europeans have. And that's because we're a young country and we're populated by people from all over the globe.
Maybe that'll be a hallmark of the future, in near future or far future, I don't know, not looking to the past. Because one of the problems that we have as a species is that we're kind of collectively and individually lost in the past, but also lost in the future. You know, the ideas about, if we think about our personal lives, you know, how things used to be, and depending on where you are in your life, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, wasn't that good? Particularly if you're somehow dissatisfied with the present, or you're thinking about, well, if I just do this and do that, you know, I'll get the girl, I'll get the job, and it's always somewhere over the horizon. And if you couple that with a kind of a misapprehension about the nature of the time and space reality we live in, and throw in, the fear of death, it's no wonder that we become kind of paralyzed with all these kind of bright lights shining in our faces.
Yes, that's the way most people live their lives, and because of all of that stress everywhere they look, the easy way out is to just become a zombie and kind of work on just keep on keeping on, and without actually being too aware of what you're doing or why you're doing it. That becomes the easiest path. Well, this is not too bad. The pain isn't too severe just yet, so let's just keep it this way. That's a sad idea, but that is the way many people do live their lives. They don't live in the moment. They're not authentic. They are just getting by from moment to moment, dealing with the pain that they have, hoping that they can keep it from getting worse. And that's the way many of us are. Well, that hopefully over the next few decades will change as we begin to see a bigger picture.
Well, the good news is as soon as you stop doing what you described, things get better pretty much immediately.
Yes, they do. Things get better and better and better, and the more you let go of fear, and the more you let go of control and the ego and the beliefs, the better everything gets. And if you can let go of most of that stuff, you'll find you live in a really wonderful place. You're satisfied. You feel joy in the things that you're doing and where you are and what's happening. And it just becomes a really pleasant place to be rather than a terrible place to be if you are full of the fear and the ego and the beliefs. So it makes a huge difference. And you'd think with that incentive, more people would be willing to do it. But that's where the belief and fear gets you. They're afraid to change because what if it gets worse? No, let's just keep our head down and keep on keeping on. That way, hopefully it won't get worse. Well, that's where fear gets you.
It's funny how we have great fear of uncertainty. You know, we want certainty even if it's kind of crap. We can sleep at night and go, oh yeah, it's crap, but at least it's the crap I'm familiar with. Better the devil you know. And yet, the tendency to project into the unknown, let's call the future the biggest unknown, we have this tendency to make it negative for some reason. That if we're imagining uncertainty, for example, what would happen if you were going to lose your job? Well, that in itself, for example, may represent something very negative. You know, how you're going to pay the mortgage, what's going to happen to your family. But there are other less severe things about even just the unknown future in general, what's going to happen in 10 years' time. And we have this collective tendency to fill it with negative things. You know, we don't like to, or we perhaps don't give ourselves the chance to imagine that it could somehow be better. And that has a great effect, of course, on how we live, because if the future is always a dark, uncertain place where things are probably going to be worse than they are now, then we resist change even when the present moment is, unacceptable on some level.
Yes, well, there's two things I'd say about that. One is that's part of the herd mentality, is to be afraid of change, to be afraid of the unknown, to be to be fearful about uncertainty. The herd doesn't like uncertainty. That's why they don't like the cow with green hair. Gets shunned because that's uncertain. We don't know about that. What does that mean? Well, we don't know, but let's get rid of them. So it's that fear of uncertainty. But the other thing that I think we mentioned it in some of the other interview that we had, sessions that we had earlier, and that is there is this feedback mechanism in this reality that goes like this. You modify future probability with your intent. So if we have an intention that things are going to get worse, we are just stacking the deck, stacking the probability for things to get worse. So we have, in many ways, I won't say that we just fully create our own reality, because we have to deal with other people. Part of our reality is the decisions that others make. But we do have a strong influence, and collectively we have a very strong influence on what this reality looks like in the future, what the future will bring. And it's our intentions that modify that probability. So you manifest things you fear just because that fear captures your mind, captures your imagination. We call that worry. And as you worry about it and fret about it and feel uneasy about it, you're putting energy into making it happen, to creating it. You are manifesting what you fear. So that kind of puts us in a hole, you see, that we have to climb out of. Because here we are fearful, and we create a very fearful place because we're so fearful, which makes us even more fearful, so we create even a worse place. And that's just a kind of a downward spiral that digs ourselves in a hole, and then we just have to wake up one day and say, this isn't working. I need to try something else, or I need to see a bigger picture. I need to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, why I am really the person that's creating all of this pain for myself. This pain isn't external, it's mostly internal. So when we wake up and see that, then things begin to change for us. And then when enough people wake up and see that, things will begin to change for the whole race, and for our institutions and our governments and our industry, and all the rest of it will begin to change as the people change.
Well, we did touch upon this before, but it's a point worth making again. And this stuff works, and I've done many interviews that express similar ideas, and I intend to do many more in the future, because it's a powerful concept, it's a powerful understanding, and it's wrapped up in popular books such as The Secret, which are, in my view, much too simplistic, but moreover, it's not helping people have a scientific understanding of what underlies this. For me, that's the key. If you can grasp some scientific mechanisms, even if they're theoretical at the minute, about how this could happen, particularly if you have that sort of mind, and it's okay. And I will just say to people, this works, this idea. Now, it's not 100%. You don't turn a car into a boat. That's not what it's about. It's about having that percentage influence, and I'm not going to say what percentage is, I don't know, but it's noticeable. It can make enough of a difference. And we saw it in terms of, say, synchronicity. You'd see it in our ancient ancestors, and it could be enough for them to intuit, I'm going to go into that cave, and actually I'm not going to go into that cave, and they pass it by, and lo and behold, there's a bear in the cave, but they didn't go in, it saved their life. And this works, and we don't fully understand it yet, and mainstream science hasn't embraced it, moreover it's rejected it, but the idea that mind is more than just, it's not just a byproduct of brain, and when you take all this stuff into account, then you can see, I'm rambling now, but then you can see how we can affect our own reality up to a point.
Yes, well, that point is defined by the amount of uncertainty. You see, if there's lots of uncertainty about a subject, then there's lots of ways that that can change. If it's uncertain how an event will come out, then that means that event could come out in one of multiple ways. And as long as there's that uncertainty, you can use your intent to modify the probability that it'll come out in this way instead of that way. But if you have a car, what's the probability it will turn into a boat? See, well, 0. So you can't do that with your mind. What you can do is modify probability based upon the natural uncertainty around that problem. So if there's somebody who has a lump on their neck and it's very uncertain what that lump is, then you have the most leverage to make sure that lump is benign. Whereas if you wait until after the diagnosis and 4 different doctors have said, oh, that's a deadly cancer, now it's a lot harder to change that because now the uncertainty surrounding it is less. And I know that's a little hard to fathom, but it's like that because this is a statistics-based, a probability-based virtual reality. And that's this idea that our intent modifies future probability is part of built-in feedback of this learning lab. And it's just the way reality works. And it's been verified over and over again. We've had, back in the 50s, who was it? I can't think of the guy's name, The Power of Positive Thinking. And it's not like these are brand new ideas. People have known for a long time that a focused intent can modify future probability.
Oh,
Yes.
I would point back earlier than that even to Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich. And a lot of people bought editions of his book exactly as the title says, because it's, then you can get, as we mentioned earlier, you can get a car and a boat, so you don't have to try and turn one into the other. But some editions of his book had material removed that actually overlaps with some of the ideas that you would be, advocating. Now, that material's been put back in again. So for me, those ideas go back, and of course they go back a lot farther than that. But in modern times, I think Think and Grow Rich was one of the earliest manifestations of this idea of manipulating your reality through your intent.
Yes, yeah, it's been, these ideas have been known and probably better known 1,000 years ago than they are now, because we're in this, our high priests now are scientists, and scientists will tell you that all this is nonsense. So we've kind of don't know it as well now as our forebears knew it.
Considering culture, again, there's concerns about the current quality and depth of thought, or perhaps where that quality of depth and thought is on a trajectory, up or down. And we spoke earlier about diverging trends amongst humanity. I'm thinking now of dumbing down in the media, and I was reading an article recently that was talking about, and it was just one little example in it, about this tendency to sort of say Albert Einstein, where, newspapers perhaps 100 years ago would have said Einstein. Actually, no, maybe I'm wrong on my timeline because I can't remember when Einstein died. But anyway, William Shakespeare, as if we didn't know who Shakespeare was. Like, was it Steve Shakespeare? Keith Einstein? Who are we talking about here? And there probably is a Keith Einstein and a Steve Shakespeare. But, in terms of what we collectively understand, does everything have to really be spelt out? And that's one thing I've noticed in the media, whether it's print, online, or broadcast, is this increasing need to kind of just go, hello, we're going to walk through this very slowly for you, that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the case. Things have, have been dumbing down for quite some time, but that doesn't really worry me too much, because I think it maybe has to do that before it builds back up. I think that the dumbing down probably started when we decided that everybody needed to be educated rather than just the elite people, be educated by tutors. And when we did that, then generally we raised the floor, if you will, but eventually that turned into something where it kind of lowered the ceiling. When you have just individuals being taught, 2 or 3 children being taught by a tutor, well, you can learn a lot more, a lot quicker, and get more sophisticated when you have that kind of learning situation. If you are one of 30 or 40 people in a class, you're not going to learn as much as quickly or as much depth or go as far or as fast as somebody that's the three students and a tutor, or maybe one student and a tutor. You see, so in a way, we've kind of shrunk on the high end to where we don't have that level of sophistication and knowledge. But we've come up on the low end to where we have a much broader sophistication and knowledge, at a lower level. So I think it's just part of the growth pattern that we're going through, and it doesn't worry me too much, although I do see the same thing when I homeschooled my children. I first retired just so I could homeschool my children, and I did that because the public schools were so terrible that I didn't want my children really to have to go through that. So I homeschooled them, but when I brought out books that were written in the 1800s, classical literature, they couldn't read them because the vocabulary had so many words in it that they didn't understand. The vocabulary of educated people probably shrank, by 50% over the last 100 years. But that's because before, those books were only being read by people who were, individually educated, if you will. And now that's not the case. So, it has dumbed down. Television has helped dumb everything down. Now, people going through life as zombies has helped dumb everything down. So there are a lot of forces kind of pushing us that way, but at the same time we dumb down, we're also kind of spreading out, and we're finding less depth but more breadth. And I'm hoping that that will turn around one day, and that we'll take that greater breadth and start to build it up to, or create a greater depth within that breadth, and we'll end up at a better place in the long run. So I'm an optimist, and I don't get too worried, but I do see the trends that you're talking about, and in a way they are kind of sad, but most of the literature we see today, most of the books, most of the movies, they're all written for a, say, 11, maybe 12-year-old. And that's the intellectual level of us in the West. We operate at about a 12-year-old's level of understanding of the world, and for most people, doesn't get much better than that. We get we get cleverer at how we interact with others. We kind of learn social graces and tricks, so we don't all act like we're 12 years old, but we mostly think and feel and behave like we're 12 years old.
Some people like to say that in advertising, going back to, say, Edward Bernays, and the mass media in general, you mentioned television and all the crass materialism that has resulted in this and the celebrity culture, that there's a kind of a sinister manipulation agenda going on here. Obviously not in every single thing, but there's a definite control agenda. Do you think that's the case, or is it possible it's partly that and it is partly just, we get what we deserve, the advertising is pitched at how people actually are, and that overall this is something that you're not concerned about because it's just another case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back?
Yeah, there is. I think definitely there's an element that wants to control. I mean, the advertisers want to control how we spend our money, so they use psychological tricks on us, tricks that go down to our basic human instincts, so on. The way we perceive color and associations and emotions that we have related to certain words and colors and phrases and pictures, and they use all of that, to manipulate the money out of our pocket into their pocket, and that's called advertising. That's what they do now. I think advertising initially was just try to describe your product so that people will know it exists and what it can do, but now it's turned into a field of psychology where you manipulate people to do what you want them to do. So yes, there is a lot of that, but often when the forces of negativity or go out to do something, they find their plan actually doesn't work in the long run, and that it tends to backfire. So I'm not too worried in the longest run. In the shorter run, yes, I see we have to outgrow this. We have to get beyond it. But I think that will happen as we grow in other ways. I think once we kind of have the idea of this being a larger reality, that sort of stuff will tend to fade away, and we will then be able to kind of grow up in multiple ways, including our level of ability to think, our level of critical analysis. You know, right now most people don't have enough critical analysis to see past the misinformation they get, on the news every night. They just have very little capacity to look at all of that and come out with some kind of assessment of what's going on. They just sort of led around and kind of believe what they hear and are manipulated by various methods. But I think that'll change in time. I don't believe that is kind of a fundamental problem that's going to do us in. I think it makes it more difficult and helps us dig a deeper hole for ourselves. But I see that it's something that is easily overcome in a fairly short period of time. Within a generation or so, that can be turned around quite a bit.
The early adverts are quite hilarious. For example, say soap, get our soap and scrape off the filth. 5p. Versus today, it's like soap, makes you super intelligent and super sexy. There always has to be some other angle. It's it's not just soap.
Yeah. If you look at old advertising, you can see it's mostly pretty direct, pretty straightforward. Here's my product, and here's what it does. And now it's here's my product, and if you don't buy it, you're going to be a schmuck.
Yeah, I think the first ever advert on British TV was for toothpaste, and I saw it, and it was absolutely hilarious because it really was just the main message was like this is good for your teeth. And, which in general it is. I'm not maybe sure about toothpaste today with all the stuff that's in it, but it was basically saying you should brush your teeth because if you go to bed and leave pieces of food in there, your teeth will rot.
Yes.
Thinking about another aspect to the environment that we live in. Now, I'm thinking about the physical one, i.e. in terms of pollution and toxins, because scarcely a week goes by now that I don't read some article about, pollution somewhere, whether it's an actual toxic spill or whether it's background radiation or whether it's a general trend, of like plastics getting into our DNA and just on and on and on. And this is something that has obviously accelerated in the industrial age for obvious reasons. And it's a cause for concern without doubt, because where I'm going with this, I'm thinking about subtle effects that tend to awaken us to a wider reality are still to a degree dependent on this physical body and its, you mentioned its role as an avatar. So I don't know if you've ever considered any effects along those lines, or maybe again, is this another thing that's just a bump along the road and it's something that we can evolve around, particularly given that as things stand, this churning out of pollutants and industrial waste is probably going to come to an end just because we don't have the ability to keep on doing it at the rate we're doing it.
Yes. Well, I think both of those things, both. I see it from both directions. And yes, there are things in our environment that actually make it very difficult for us to, say, do something as simple as meditate. Sugar, for example, you ingest sugar and your mind gets fuzzy and cloudy, and it's really hard to have a crystal clear intent or a crystal clear consciousness when you ingest things that make your thinking process fuzzy and not sharp, not concise, not precise, not the problem solving isn't just because people in their elementary schools are told to, shut up and be quiet, don't think. Thinking out of the box will be punished, It's not only that, but the food they eat does not encourage them to think, makes it more difficult for them to be creative, for them to think out of the box. Yes, we have all of those things that are going on, but these are problems we can outgrow. These are problems we can overcome. Once we see the problem as a culture, as a race, once we see the problem, it won't take but a generation to fix the problem. These are not things that are fundamental. These are just like bad habits, if you will, and I see that we can get out of them. But one of the things that also can be a problem is if we look around at all these issues where things seem to be deteriorating. Our health is deteriorating because of the way we eat. Our lifespans, I don't know if you know this, but the human lifespan, at least in Western culture, is now getting shorter. It's coming down from the last couple of hundred years. It's been getting longer and longer and longer as we conquer diseases and have antibiotics and all the other things that now we can do. We're living longer and longer, and then about a decade ago, it started to level off, and then it started coming down, and that's because we eat garbage. We eat food that has no nutritional value. It damages our bodies. It gives us cancer. It gives us heart disease. We live lives full of angst and stress, like zombies. Marching to our doom. We have all this stuff going on. So, but if we look at that and we can say, all right, kids are less educated than they were. The college graduates today can just barely pass the test that was required to get out of high school 50 years ago. We have all these ideas. The pollution is getting worse, and pretty soon we talk ourselves into a negative view of things. It's like, oh no, everywhere we look, it's oh no. And if we get too much wrapped up in all of those oh no's, then we become part of the problem as well. So I think we have to avoid, we don't want to avoid understanding and looking at the problem. These are real problems, and they're significant problems, and they're problems that hurt us. But they're problems we can fix. They're problems that we can fix in a generation, maybe even less than that. And yes, we're making really bad choices here in many ways, but I think that's part of what these bad choices represent, our lack of awareness of who and what we are. And as we gain that awareness, I believe we will make better choices, and as we make better choices, I think the environment will clean up, the education will get better, our attitude toward children and students will get better, and a lot of these things will fix themselves, and they won't take that long to fix. It was just in the environment. I can remember when I was Upper State New York, just south of Lake Erie. They had some water that actually would catch on fire. This is flammable water because it had so many chemicals and so much pollution in it that it actually was a fire hazard. And the idea that the Lake Erie area, people would say it's going to take 200 years before the environment cleans itself up from all of this trash we put in it. But something like 10 or 12 years went by after they cleaned up the pollution, and it was whole again. It didn't take nearly as long as they thought. This earth, this environment is really good at cleansing itself if we just stop pouring more and more toxins into it. So I think most of these problems are reversible, and I think they're reversible in a fairly short term once we grow up enough and have enough understanding and awareness to see the poor choices that we're making. So yes, these are bad problems, but they're not the kind of problems that we can't change by changing ourselves.
Well, just a random thought, but it ties in with what we were saying about physical toxins, and specifically those that would affect the brain, and also tying in with our assumptions about life and death. I'm quite passionate about this idea that of lifelong learning, and I don't mean going to school when you're retired, but the idea that life is a journey, because we have this fixed perception, particularly in the West, that despite the saying life begins at 40, that actually you go through a midlife crisis, you buy a motorbike, leave your wife, all that sort of cliched stuff. It doesn't make you happy, of course, but that's why it's called a crisis. And it's pretty much all downhill after a certain point. Whereas learning and growth should be a lifelong business, I believe. And this also ties in, I suppose, to widespread disrespect and disregard, and it doesn't, for elders. And this doesn't have to be really malign and vicious, but it can be a low-level, gentle kind of like, oh yes, Mr. Smith is 80 now, and yes, poor old guy sort of thing. Whereas he might know more than he ever has at that point, and that's kind of the way I think it should be. And I think maybe a change of attitude around all of what I've just said could be something that we evolve towards also.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. It turns out that we do have a mission here. There is a point for our existence, and that point is to learn, to grow, to become more, to let go of fear. And there isn't any time in your life at any age that you can't be doing that. In other words, you never get too old to do what we're here to do. You're always, able to do that. And as a matter of fact, the older you get, the more maturity you take on, the easier it is to do this, to do what it is we're supposed to do. So it's just the other way around. The older you are, generally the broader your perspective can be. Now, some old people, of course, get very narrow-minded, and that they can't tolerate anything out of the box. But that's not the way it has to be. Again, that's herd mentality. That's the fear of change, the fear of uncertainty that's there. But we as a people are here to learn, to grow, and that growth of making good choices, making choices toward love, making choices toward cooperation and caring and being sensitive to other people, that is something that you can do, whether you're in a wheelchair or not. You're still capable of doing that, even if you're not capable of, jogging or doing other kinds of things. It never ends. We're here to learn. That's the point. And it never ends. That's our whole job.
Now, setting aside your circle of family and friends and associates and colleagues and people that you deal with, do you ever find you have problems dealing with people of your own generation, relating to them? Obviously you can deal with them at a human level day to day. That's fine, because I find I'm in my 40s, and I find that seems to be a decade when people particularly begin to settle into a rut. And I'm not trying to suggest for a minute there are people of all ages who have found a wonderful place to be, personally, professionally, whatever it happens to be. But, there's a certain section I find of the population that begin to kind of block out the new things. And, music's a big thing for me. And one typical thing that people in their 40s or even 30s tend to do is stop listening to new bands, because they want to just go back to what they used to have. And I don't know if you've experienced that at all in your stage of life now, or whether you experienced it earlier in your life.
Well, I've always been kind of apart from my culture. I was one of these kids that even when I was 5 years old, I didn't really fit in that well with the other 5-year-olds. It's been that way my whole life, but I have been significantly different in my the way I see reality, the things that are important and significant to me. So it's just the way life is. I didn't actually see so much of a change. But part of this change that you get is that, yes, sometime in around the 35 to 45 region is when a set of choices tend to be made where you decide to either become the zombie and just keep on keeping on, trying to keep fear and pain from getting any worse, or you break out of that and find a deeper significance in life and a deeper, a more functional reason to be. And I think the people who just keep on keeping on, the ones that choose the zombie route, they become a little problematical for the ones that choose the growth route to interact with. So yes, I get along with everybody, but I really have very few close friends. And my wife would tell you the same thing. She, we get along with everybody we work with and everybody we see and that sort of thing. And we're not socially retarded, but we just don't have very many good friends. And that's because there's just not very many people who you can actually sit down and be open with and talk and have a meaningful conversation. That gets fewer and fewer. But at the same time, I don't need a lot of people to do that with. The growth becomes something different, something that's more like a volcano erupting, more like something that's just going of its own energy. I don't need a lot of input from other people. I get just a little input here and there. I still read. I still see what other people are thinking. I've got an internet that opens me up to the information on the globe, and I do that. So, yes, I know what you mean, and it is there, but to me, it's never actually been a problem. It's just the way people are, and you have to not think negatively about such people. The people who have chosen a zombie life, you have to let them be and realize that they're doing the best they can with what they've got, that they just don't have I don't know, they don't have yet, they haven't come across that, I don't want to say that, they don't have what it takes. They do have what it takes, but they don't have the wherewithal, the focus, I don't know, the creativity, something that they just can't do anything other than they're doing. They're just doing that because they're stuck there, not because they like it, but because they don't know what else to do. They're sort of stuck, and you can't unstick them. They have to unstick themselves. So I see these people with compassion. I see them as doing the best they can with what they've got, with what they're dealing with. They've got a lot of fear, and when you have fear, it's hard to just let that fear go. Fear frightens you, it paralyzes you, and it makes it difficult for you to make other choices. So they're just kind of stuck with that level of fear, and they're not having a happy time. They're generally very, frustrated people. Zombies are not happy people. Go to your friendly neighborhood zombie and talk to them, and you'll find mostly negativity. You'll find all the things that are wrong with the world, all the things they don't like. They are not happy people. They don't have much joy in their life. They have very little peace in their life and almost no satisfaction. And I think they deserve compassion, not disdain, rather than, wow, those people really don't get it and, get away from me. It's more like, geez, those poor people, they're struggling and struggling, and they can't quite get past that fear. And you think, is there anything I can do to help? And sometimes there is. You can maybe give them a word or two or say something that helps them see a bigger picture. But if you try that and it doesn't work, and you try something else that doesn't work, you just need to let them be. They'll get to it when they get to it. Everybody has to grow up at their own way, at their own pace, and they're just not ready yet. So that's kind of the way I look at it. You have to avoid, any kind of negative sense about they're not as good as you are, because then that's your own ego talking, and that becomes that becomes a problem.
Yeah, well, two things from that you mentioned in your book actually are brought to mind by what you just said. First, I think the actual line you use is that we can't all start at the finish line, and that applies to every individual unit of consciousness, and also the idea that we can't help other people in the sense of making it your life's work to change somebody else or to bring them up to where you are. It's kind of like you help other people by changing yourself. You see,
Yes. The only thing you can do to help another person change is give them a environment that makes it easier for them to change themselves. But they have to change themselves. And what kind of environment makes it easier for people to change themselves? A very secure environment, because the problem is fear. So if you can give them a loving or a caring or a respectful environment that makes them feel a little more secure, maybe that'll help them have the courage to change themselves, but, maybe it won't. In any case, it's their choice. They're adults, and they have to make the choice, and they have to live with the results. And there's nothing you can do to change another person's choices. They have to make those choices themselves. And if you force them to make better choices, you haven't really helped them grow up a bit. You may have put them in a better place financially or something else, but they really haven't grown up any. You're working at symptoms there. You're not really working at fundamental problems.
I suppose leading on from that is, again, your idea in the book that our evolutionary problem is quality of consciousness, and change what you are, not what you do. And that has great relevance, I think, today when people are looking to change what they do. And there's a lot of validity in that, because they can perhaps improve their own happiness or put themselves in what you described, a more secure environment, or put their loved ones in more secure environment. But the idea of changing what you are is important, because it's changing what you do alone it won't necessarily affect your inner life to a great extent.
Exactly. What you have to get in this idea of love versus fear is not at the intellectual level. You can read lots of wonderful books and things about spiritually and growing up and love and so on, and you can memorize them all and be able to quote them all forwards and backwards, and it may not help you grow one tiny bit. The change has to come at the being level, not at the intellectual level. It's not about acting more grown up, it's about being more grown up. And we tend to live out of our intellects, live a, what do we call it, sort of our, the way we think we ought to be, our image, kind of work to an image. This is what I'd like to become. This is what I think I should do. I should be more kind. Okay, so then I will make an effort to do that. But that's all out of the intellect. There's a difference between acting kind and being kind. Yes, if you are kind, then you will act kind, but you're acting kind because of you're being kind because that's the way you are, not because that's the way you think you should be. So we need to be authentic, and we need to work out of our being level, not out of our intellect. The intellect is often an expression of our ego and our beliefs. So you have to be very wary of running your life through the intellect.
And you also mentioned that we talked earlier about individual development and steps forward, that these individual steps do matter. This does add up, and I think that would feed into what some of the doom and gloom scenarios that we were talking about earlier.
Yes, our way forward, our growth comes in a series of very small steps. Every once in a while, a big aha moment will come, and you'll take kind of a bigger step where something suddenly becomes clear. But it only suddenly becomes clear is because you've taken 1,000 smaller steps up to that point, which allows it to become clear. We grow in very small steps. We make 1,000 choices every day. Most of our choices are so small we don't even know they're choices. We just do things. And every one of those choices needs to be made with awareness and, in an expression of you and your quality at the being level. So that's where it all comes from, just one choice at a time. And the choice may be how you react to something, how you react to an insult or a slight, or how you react to somebody else's need or caring. And you make a choice how you react. And those choices will add up to define you. We are the result of all the choices we've made and all the stuff, of course, that we come in with. So we just need to see that it's every one of these little insignificant seeming choices is what creates us. That's how we grow up, is by making those choices better.
Well, Tom, actually, if people take the time to go through your trilogy, the My Big Toe trilogy, they will find out why we exist and how to fulfill our purpose, which sounds pretty damn big. And as I said, I think at the start of the first interview, it is big. Some read these ideas, indeed they might read your book, and still go ho-hum, and it's kind of like, yeah, even people who are kind of like initially fired up, it doesn't last. It kind of fades away into the sort of everyday humdrum. And this begs the question, why are we so poor then? What's supposed to be our primary purpose? Is it simply that we're not necessarily poor at it? It's just, again, that we're at a particular stage right now.
Yes, that's the reason that happens, that you can learn these things. A lot of people will go visit, they'll take a training course, and they'll go take a course with some guru, and they'll sit at his feet for 2 weeks, and they'll meditate, and they'll do all this stuff, And by the time they leave, they're up on a high. They got it. They are, great leaps ahead of where they were when they came. And then you look at them 3 months later, and there's no difference in their life at all. And what happened? Where did it go? Well, it's because they got it in their intellect. They got it through their thinking, but they didn't get it at a basic level. They never got it at what I call the being level. In other words, it hasn't changed them. They just think about things differently, but eventually put them back in their own environment, and they'll go right back to thinking about things in the same way. As long as it's thinking about things, it's not a very powerful change. But when it changes you, you become a different person. You're not the same person anymore, and that change doesn't go away. That change is permanent. Once you change, then you're a different person, and you stay that different person. There's no going back. You can't unchange it. You can't go back to the way you were. So that's the difference. We tend to live out of our heads. We live out of our intellects. And if you go hang out with the guru, you may feel more enlightened because you and he and all the other people in your group are all sharing this, collective consciousness together, and that kind of pulls you up. But then once that group is disbanded, you kind of go right back to being yourself again. So people who aren't ready yet to change themselves at any fundamental level, they just get it in their intellect. And when you do that, it's, your mind will go right back to the way it was once you put yourself right back in that same environment again. It's not a permanent change. It isn't. You haven't really learned anything significant until you've learned it at the being level. So that's why it works that way. But I see that a lot. I talk to a lot of people who have read my books sometimes 2 or 3 times. They know everything that's in there, and it's still obvious that they don't understand any of it.
Just to dive back briefly before we close into the science part of this that we covered in earlier interviews, thinking about non-physical matter reality, are we alone, or are there any, I don't even know what words to reach for in these sorts of questions, beings, entities, anything that exists, and what does exist mean? It really is, language is so limiting, but is there anything out there observing, or are we on our own?
Okay, if we take the bigger picture to where this is just a virtual reality, and there's another big component to reality that is non-physical to us. If we're going to look at the non-physical part of it, then there's lots of things out there. There's lots of other virtual realities out there. There's many other individuated units of consciousness out there, and the larger consciousness system itself is, aware of what it's doing and what's going on. It wants us to grow up and survive and progress because our evolution is its evolution. We are not bodies, we're chunks of consciousness. And as we evolve, which means get rid of fear, grow toward love, so does it, because we're part of it and it's part of us. So in that case, yes, somebody's watching, somebody's paying attention, somebody will help you. Maybe I should say something instead of somebody, but same idea. So all of that is available. Now, if we talk just about our physical reality, this virtual reality, then it's a different problem. Then we say, well, there's, so many billion, trillion suns, and certainly some of those would have planets that would have, would support life evolving there and so on. So we look at the statistics of all of that, and the probability, and we say, well, almost certainly there would be, other things there, other beings in this vast universe. But then the question is, well, where are they? Well, if they were there, because we're not a particularly old part of the universe, we're in a relatively, medium part of the universe as far as age goes. We're not old. We're not the youngest part of the universe either, but there's those that are, a billion years ahead of us. Well, a billion years is a lot of evolution can take place. So we would expect the ones that were, a billion years more advanced, more evolved, if they evolved at basically the same rate we did, to be to the point that, we ought to see them. But that's not necessarily the case. See, that's because we don't understand, or we don't really appreciate that this physical reality has limitations, and the spaces are so great, and the only way to traverse those great distances effectively is with the mind, not with the body. So now that puts us back to the non-physical again. Besides that, there is a possibility that we're alone in this physical reality. And why would that be the case? And say, well, what a waste to generate this whole universe just to one little planet around one little sun and all the rest of it. That's inefficient. Well, it's not really. You see, all the rest of it can be rendered as no more than lights in the sky. And most of it's not even lights in the sky. It only has to be rendered to an individual with a big, expensive telescope. So none of that actually has to be rendered or dealt with at all just to deal, with our physical universe if we are alone. So that's a possibility. We may be alone. We may be the thing in this universe that's interesting, and the rest of it is just lights in the sky. They're not, in a virtual reality, in a virtual probabilistic reality, you don't have to create all the details of all the molecules and all the atoms and all the stars and all the planets and all the rest of it. It doesn't work that way. You only interact with consciousness that are interacting with you. So that's just data being passed about. And as far as we're concerned, all that other stuff doesn't have to be rendered for us at all because we don't observe it. We don't look at it. Somebody looks at it, then it's, a random draw is taken from the probabilities, and here's what they see, and they turn their head away from the telescope. It's not being rendered anymore. So that's the nature of a virtual reality. So in the physical world, we could be alone, or it just may be that you can't beat that speed of light speed limit, and there are, it's just impractical for others to get to us and us to them because the distances are so great. And or it may be that we will end up interacting with some others out of this physical universe. Now, as far as the non-physical goes, that's a different question. Yes, there's lots of stuff out there, lots of individual virtual realities, lots of individual units of consciousness, and there is a system that is paying attention. So that's kind of the whole. I'm not sure exactly what the scope of your problem was, but that's kind of the bigger scope of the answer.
Well, I'm going to conclude on that cliffhanger, frankly, because I can't think of any other way to actually stop. Tom, we've been talking about over this series You're My Big Toe trilogy, which is the 3 books, Awakening, Discovery, and Inner Workings. And these books are not just interesting. I think it might even have been your expression. They're ways to meet life. You don't have to get it first time. You don't even have to get all of it. But the information is there if people will, if they will see it. So tell folks whatever you want to about the books. I mean, they're widely available individually and as one big, massive sort of doorstop type book. And share your website and anything else you'd like to put out there.
Okay. Yeah, these books, the first thing I'd like to tell you about the books is that they are written to help people with the left brain dominant approach to things. In other words, logical process. That's the dominant viewpoint in our Western culture, and it's becoming the dominant viewpoint worldwide in just about all cultures, where we tend to be left brain dominant, logical process. Things have to make sense. They have to be logical. We don't do too much with our intuition so much as we used to. So anyway, they're logical books. You have to start at the beginning and work your way through them. First book to the second to the third, because what you learn in the first is important to understand the second, which is important to understand the third. So it is a logical process. There's no big assumptions or leaps of faith or any of that. It's all just basic science and logical process. Now, the books are free on Google Books. So if you don't want to buy them, you can get them free. They're in any bookstore. Probably if you order them special, you can do that. But they're in Amazon, and there's an international distributor that can distribute them anywhere on the globe if you want to get your bookstore to order them. I sell them at my website, and we'll mail them out worldwide. That website is www.mybigtoe.com. Now, I also have a lot of YouTube videos. I'm probably up to about 130 now, 140. All the interviews I do, all the workshops I give, the lectures, and all of that, if I can get a good recording of it or a link to it, then I'll put it up on my YouTube site. So all of the things I've done, and there's, some of them are very long, like 16 hours long. Some of them are short, like 15 minutes. But mostly they're pretty longish, but don't try to, take too big a bite. And it's the same with the books. Go through it slowly. Go through it, read no more than a chapter probably in a day or maybe even a week. Because the idea isn't to get it into your intellect and understand it intellectually. You have to synthesize what you read with your own experience. It has to make sense to you. It has to be something that you see and make a part of your own experience. So my big toe isn't so much, it's not, the my isn't in there because I'm so proud of it. The my is in there because if it's not your experience, it can't be your truth. So my big toe is really just a starter, if you will, a place to start for your own big toe. And that's what it's all about. You, from your own experience, building up your own ideas of reality, how the world works, and what you're doing here. So that's kind of the short thumbnail view, I guess, of my big toe. So if you read the books and then go do the lectures and workshops on YouTube, you'll get a pretty good picture of what it's all about. I do most of the science on the lectures in YouTube. I didn't want my books to be too science heavy because I wanted them to be, for everybody. I didn't want to books about science tend to intimidate a large part of the population, and I wanted to make them available and on-ramp for the people who have a hard time getting it in the form of poetry, who have a need for logical process. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of what they are and where they are and how to get them. Just take small bites, read slowly, and make it your own. And if it doesn't relate to you, if you don't relate to it, if it's like, I hear the words, but that's just not my experience, then leave it alone. Go on to the next part or just put it down altogether. You have to, you have to make this yours, not mine. So that's I guess that's the thing that I can tell all of your listeners, that it's not enough just to read the books. You have to internalize them. And if you can't do that, then don't push it. Don't believe anything I tell you. I don't want belief. Giving up one belief for another belief is not on your path to success. You don't want to believe what I say. It needs to be part of your understanding, part of your experience. Now, if you go to most of my workshops, like Calgary workshop, I did that in 2011, and toward the end of that, I have 3 days. Friday was an intro. Saturday is the theory, how things work and why they work that way. And Sunday is applications. And in applications, I talk about using your intent to heal, to remote view, how do you get into the larger consciousness system, how do you gather evidence of this larger reality on your own. So if the evidence is what you need, then do look at the workshops, and at the back of most of them, you'll find a section on how can you gain the experience to make this part of your own reality, rather than just, do I believe it or not believe it? That's not useful. It needs to be yours. So go get it. If what I've done is created a spark of interest and you're going to go find out, then I have done everything that I set out to do. Where you actually end up is not that important to me. It's that you go after it, that you go try, that you go to learn. You'll end up wherever you end up, because eventually, as long as you're open-minded and also skeptical, you will end up at the right place.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for joining us for parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The biggest thing I've ever done on legalizefreedom.com.
Yeah, well, that's a lot, but it's been fun, Greg, and we've covered a lot of territory. We've I don't know, maybe we've left a few stones unturned, but not too many. It's a lot. You know, a theory of everything takes a long time to talk about everything. So I'm glad you took the time to do it. Often I have interviews that last for 1 hour, and we never do anything more than barely scratch the surface. And that makes a good introduction, but it doesn't take people very far. And you've made the effort to create something here that'll do a lot more than just scratch the surface. It will get people thinking and hopefully point them in a direction to go make a difference in their own life.
Well, I hope so too. And just in conclusion, just thanks for being so generous with your time.
You're quite welcome. That's what I do. That's why I'm here to share.
Well, folks, that's it for another week. As ever, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, check out the website, which is legalizefreedom.com. That's legalize-freedom.com, where you'll find an archive of programs offering alternative views on a wide range of topics, including politics and economics, energy and environment, culture, spirituality, history, and the nature of reality. You can also browse and buy a range of publications from our guests, and if you're feeling generous, make a donation to help keep the site up and running. Whether you listen, donate, or do both, I greatly appreciate your support. Until next time, I'm Greg Moffat, and you've been listening to legalizefreedom.com.